The next tense I'd like to tell you about is the past simple tense, which is known as the onvoltooid verleden tijd in Dutch. Now, the past simple creates some problems for Dutch students because the past tenses in Dutch can be used interchangeably. It doesn't matter whether you say ik ben geweest of ik ging. It's not the same case in English, but I will be telling you more about when to use the past simple in the next video. The form of the past simple tense is actually quite simple. If I have a regular verb like the verb to walk, all I have to do is add ed at the end of the word. Of course, we have to be careful with regular verbs to make sure that the spelling rules are observed. An example of a regular verb worked out can be seen here in the verb to walk. I walked, you walked, he, she, or it walked, we walked, you walked, they walked. So, at least in the past simple tense, the verb stays the same throughout. However, we also have another troublesome group of verbs which are called the irregular verbs or onregelmatig werkwoorden. These verbs need to be learned by heart. There is no other way to go about it. But if I take the verb to think, we end up with a sentence such as, he thought about it. There's no relation to the ed form. Now, the most irregular verb in English is the verb to be. And in the past tense, it becomes I was, you were, he, she, and it was, we were, you were, and they were. Another important verb is the verb to have, but even though it is irregular, from have it becomes had, like the other irregular verbs, its form remains unchanged throughout. So if you can learn what it should be in the past tense, at least you know it is the same in all the forms. The only verb where that doesn't happen is the verb to be. Once again, a look at these regular and irregular verbs, walk being an example of a regular, think an example of an irregular verb. Very important, irregular verbs need to be memorized. How do we do this? In the back of the book, of every book, is a list of verbs. They usually go in this format. You get the Dutch translation of the verb. Next to it you get the infinitive, which is often referred to as hele werkwoord. The second row is the past simple, or the onvoltooid verleden tijd. And the third row is the past participle, which we used with the present perfect and the past perfect, the voltooid deelwoord. It is a very good idea to learn them all in a row, such as zingen, to sing, sang, sung. But very importantly, in the past simple, we only use the verbs in the second column. Now let's move on to the use of the verb. When do we use the past simple? It's actually quite simple. If you have an activity that happened any time in the past and it is now over, or as we say, it is nu afgelopen, then we use the past simple. In our example sentence we have, yesterday I went to school by bus. Am I still on the bus right now? No, I'm not. Therefore, here I have to use the past simple. We often have the verb when. We often have when something happened in that sentence. In that case, the when is yesterday. When did I go to school by bus? Yesterday I went to school by bus. The second time we use the past simple is very similar to its use in the present simple. If something was a habit in the past, I've got to use this verb. So, when I was young, I always went to school by bus. When did this happen? When I was young, and I did it very often. So this is an obvious case to use the past simple. Questions and negative sentences in the past simple. I've taken some example sentences here. In the case of regular verbs, such as I walked to school, and common irregular verbs like he thought about it, we need to use the help of the verb did. So in the same way that we had do I go to school, now we take it into the past tense. Did I go to school? So I walked to school becomes I didn't walk to school, and it's very important to see that the ed has disappeared after the verb walk. And in the same form with he didn't walk to school. So there is no shit rule in the past simple. For the question forms, I use the verb did and the inversion. So did I walk to school? Did he walk to school? It works exactly the same with the verb thought. I didn't think about it. He didn't think about it. Did I think about it? Did he think about it? Of course, the verb to be, which is always irregular, as shown by the sentences you were late, he was late, always simply uses an inversion. Except now the inversion is in the past simple. So you were late becomes you weren't late in the negative, and he wasn't late. And in the question form, were you late? Was he late? So, summing up about the past simple test. The form of the verb is simple. We simply add ed to the verb. Irregular verbs need to be learned. Remember, it is the second column that is the past simple. When do we use the past simple? We use it when something happens and it is now over, or when something was a habit in the past. How do we make the negatives and questions of the past simple? Easy. We use the help of the verb to do in the past tense. So the verbs use the verb did. The verb to be is always different, so it uses not for the negative and inversions for questions. An easy way of recognizing the past simple is to look for the signal words in the sentence. These signal words are yesterday, in 1999, last Tuesday or last week, and a month ago. They all give us an indication of when something happened. And at the end of the video, I recommend you can do some exercises on the following website. It will correct your own work so that you can check whether you have understood the video and whether you can actually carry this out.